analyze thousands of drawings, schedules, reports, and generate information for you, put things together in a simple report format, and create a plan. So the construction industry has an enormous amount of data which is generated every day, like BIM, RFIs, risk logs. The challenge is not collecting the data, it is making sense of it in time to act. That's where AI can help. It doesn't replace the human, but it equips the human with more accuracy, so acting as a tool. So let's go start with it, but keep in mind that AI is not changing the construction, it is changing the way we take construction decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranji. And next I wanted to allow Christina to discuss a case study within her own company with success of using AI.
So AI adoption really starts at the ground level with technology, right? It can only analyze the data that you have in your systems, right? So the first thing you want to do when thinking about AI adoption is making sure you take a look at your systems, you've built them out to customize them the way that makes sense for your operation to develop and grow, right? So then you need to get people in the right mindset about AI, because a lot of people in the industry are worried that AI is going to replace them or take their jobs. Nothing can really replace the experience that we have in this field, especially when it comes to our field workers, our supervisors, our project managers. But what it can do is it can enhance them. So getting people in that right mindset is extremely important. You are the thought leader. Everyone on your team is a thought leader. And the AI is really a problem solver and a partner for you to succeed and achieve results more rapidly in the workspace. So what you want to target if you're trying to start AI in your organization is look for some quick wins right out the gate, right? You want to find some processes that could be automated. For example, one of the first processes we decided to recapture was AP automation. We realized we had a whole team dedicated to data entry, getting all our invoices in the system, checking to make sure that the right numbers were put in, reconciling it against statements. There was so much work going into what is really, the lower level value task of AP and accounts payable. And we wanted to shift that mindset. So when we enabled AP automation, where it scanned invoices in, matched the POs, began looking at the statements to reconcile those for us automatically. Now our AP team and our finance team was able to focus on the bigger picture, right? Which was, why were we getting invoiced for this amount when our standard rate should be $32, not $45? Did we go over on labor? We started to be able to become more proactive with our cash management instead of reactive, and really control the framework of how we're doing our finance and cash management. That was a great easy win for us. We also looked at out-of-the-box CAN tools like Document Crunch AI, and we were able to start loading 400, 500-page contracts and contract documents into this system, build our own custom risk profile to determine whether there were indemnity issues, warranty issues, delayed damages, force majeure, and within minutes, the system can analyze all that data, create the checklist of bullet points for us, and allow us to review and click through and talk to that document. Even someone that might not be as well versed in the legal sector can understand what it's saying because of the way it describes it. So there's some quick wins in AI that you can use that'll increase your productivity and reduce your time spent doing manual menial tasks so that you guys can focus on the bigger picture. And I think that's what the most important thing that AI is going to bring to the table is for us.
Thank you, Christina. And before we get into the questions here, I just want to let everybody know in the crowd, on the webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put something in the chat. We'll allow time for questions at the end, but we want this to turn more into a discussion if we can. So I know Christina already touched on it, but I want to ask for the group so that everyone has a chance to speak on it. So as you know, there is an issue with culture surrounding the use of AI. Some employees see it as a replacement for them. What do you think needs to be done to change the mindset from replacement to agent?
I'll start. At Miller, we're really just scratching the surface at Miller. And we started scratching the surface about a year ago. And really our focus has been on Copilot. We really wanted our people to use Copilot, not ChatGPT. So we did close that link to ChatGPT, not necessarily on their phones, but internally. So when we implemented Microsoft Copilot, it was more, of a free version, using the web. Let's see what our people will use it for and get out of it. And I like to call it, I know people are calling it assistant, I like to call it my teammate. And in recent weeks, with using one arm, it has really become my very good teammate. A success story in our company, I did want to touch on that real quick, has been, a VP did send out an email to all of our PMs and PAs and said, hurry up, I need all this middle data, the spec data for lockers for these projects. And I'm thinking to myself, why did you just send that out? Why don't you go ahead and put it into Copilot? Copilot's going to generate all that data for you without having 10 teammates go and look at all of these projects and extract that data. So sure enough, I did that and he was amazed. So I think, reiterating to our people, showing the people out there, our teammates, what Copilot can do for you is going to really grab their attention. You want to make sure that you're communicating the purpose clearly. It's your teammate. It is not going to replace you. You want to make sure that you do look at the data that it is producing, because it's not always right.
Yeah, I think the data part is probably the most important component to AI. I think once you get people to adopt it and understand how it makes subject matter experts allowed to focus on their expertise, right? That's kind of their aha moment. Like, I have more time now to do what I actually want to do in the business. So if you're a scheduler, right, you don't want to be tied down with a bunch of medial tasks. You want to look at the big picture, try to figure out how to deliver a product on time, right? And that's where AI can be leveraged to let you play to your strengths versus just kind of keep your head above water. But the data management, and we'll probably get more into this throughout the conversation, is kind of step one to becoming an AI first or a data first organization, because that data has to have a central source of truth. And I think once you have that established, the adoption kind of comes naturally, because those things that you may not have had access to before, or you had to go through 2 or 3 different levels to get access to something, is now at your fingertips. So it's kind of, I kind of liken it to when Google became, a word in the dictionary, and everybody just Googled it, to find an answer, right? That's kind of where we're at right now. And the professionals will tell you that we're in a super cycle. The last one we had was kind of the smartphone. So this is the age that we're in, and there was probably late adopters of the smartphone. I probably have somebody in my family with the flip phones still, right? But for the most part, everybody's going to trend that way eventually. So you kind of have to get out the boat and realize that it's a tool that you can use.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of that too, because this is what some people do call the in-between phase of AI. So if you're an early adopter or mid-stage adopter, you're gonna already be ahead of the curve with your competition. Because, you know, the late adopters, they're gonna have to catch up, they're gonna have to build a framework, they're gonna have to figure all this out. So this is really the time and place in the marketplace to start really looking at your AI strategy. You want to be an innovator in the industry. You want to be at the top of your game. So when you see these in-between stages in technology where things are ramping up, you want to get on the ground floor. And if you don't have an internal resource that can do that, there's consultants available and there's people you can reach out to help restructure your data and build a system that's going to help move you forward.
Thank you so much. And you all talked about the importance of data when using AI. So I want to ask, how are we keeping data secure while utilizing AI?
So that's a great question. So there's two schools of thought. So one is to keep the data within the product or system that you're using, and then the second would be to develop a closed private AI server. I think at a business level, that's the right move, because you don't want to expose your trade secrets, your secret sauce to the world. So, you know, like Winnie was saying, right, not using ChatGPT, which is open source, and you're using your data to train their models for your competitors, right? So we want to keep that in-house, and there's different tools out there, a lot of different private AI servers. Azure's coming out with some, AWS has some. So wherever your data is, you can lock it down. If you follow NVIDIA, right, that's kind of their big claim to fame, and why their valuations go up as high as it is because they're kind of cracking that code. They used to be the backup to Intel, and now they're leading the charge when it comes to data. But it's you want to have that secured and make sure that it's not being exposed to outside environment where your competition can get access to it.
And at Miller, we actually, I feel like 17 years ago, we set ourselves up for AI because we've been using, we haven't had servers for about 17 years. We've been in the cloud. We've been using Microsoft SharePoint. And so, having that enterprise data and utilizing AI tools has really helped us there. It helps us gather all that information that we're looking for our teammate to help us find.
And from a network perspective, you can see, or your sysadmin can take a look and see who in your organization is using ChatGPT or other open source AI tools. And you do want to train around that. So Whitney had a great point that she does coffee talks with her team members, and it's just, informal, conversational talking points on best practices in the industry. And we use something similar, but we also have our cybersecurity awareness platform that sends out, monthly trainings and, opportunities for to upskill our employees and make sure that they're more aware of the ramifications of putting private data into a public system. So you do need to start having conversations around that, because I can guarantee you everyone in your workspace is using AI to some extent or another. And whether they're putting in personal data or private company data, you want to have a policy around that. You either want to block the channel if you can't control it, or find a way to use canned resources to pull it into your own infrastructure, like he mentioned earlier. And those types of systems, the earlier you adopt them, the better they get, because it's a data feedback loop at the end of the day, right? So she's been building, they've been building into their data feedback loop for 17 years using SharePoint and putting in policies, procedures, SDS sheets, safety policies, and now they have a whole repository of information and users that can continue to train the model and grow the model. So that's one of the great things about AI too. It gets smarter with your team, and whatever you put into it, it's going to continue to analyze and grow and continue to streamline your operations and your information that's available.
Yeah, I think a good point just to clarify is, what is data? So that is literally everything from PDF or an Excel file all the way up to information that you're putting into different systems. So there's so many different data sources that are out there that you can leverage to training. And one of the things that I kind of preach, we're building out some RFP tools, right? Is the data from our losses are actually some of the best data that we have because it's how we correct to get wins. So when you're looking at the data across your organization, you want to look at all the data, and it can be anything from a paper file that you can scan and the computer can read, all the way to those 55 Excel spreadsheets that are sitting on your desktop that you have to work through, and somebody messes up the coding on it for you every single time you send it out, right? So those are all areas that you can leverage to get your data into one place and leverage it to make decisions.
I did want to speak on the data. It also has to do with the level of access that each user has. So if I'm using Copilot, asking it a question, and it's utilizing my data, if I'm admin, it's searching across the board for the data. But if somebody with minimal access, it is not looking at that other data that they don't have access to.
Yeah, they don't let me look at the finances. They're like, he doesn't need that. So yeah, it can be definitely role-based on that side.
And I know that we're talking a lot about Copilot being an AI tool, but what and it's a pretty overwhelming process for anybody, even for me. I'm still learning Copilot. I'm still learning all the AI tools. Miller, we use Procore, and we're just scratching the surface there with the rollout of their Assist, which is their Copilot, and building agents to, I'm still trying to understand what agent we're going to build to be able to help streamline and help our teammates pull the data out of Procore. Open space and they have AI tools. All of these third parties do have AI tools, and it's a pretty overwhelming thing to figure out how you're going to implement that in your company. So you have to have somebody like Chateau to help you.
Ranging, not it.
I actually feel bad for people who don't have somebody like me or Christina in their company to help them roll these things out, and that's where Chateau does come into play because they can help you do that.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting word, so I'm going to throw it to Ranchi. Agents.
Yes.
It's a buzzword when you look at AI, agentic AI agents. What is agentic AI, Ranchi?
The agentic AI is the actionable agent. So they perform certain actions. So let's say you want to attend certain events. So you simply tell the agent that I want to attend an event in New York. The agentic AI has the capability to see the pattern of your travel, your preferences, which airline you fly. You prefer morning flight or afternoon flight. You prefer which particular hotel. So the agentic AI see all those patterns and do all the bookings, scheduling for you automatically. That is the capability of AI that is helping you as an agent.
Yes, which is much different than a ChatGPT prompted response. Where you prompt it and then it gives you the response. It's actually running on a large action model, and then you can train that model to perform specific functions. And we're seeing it in a lot of different spaces. One, risk management on the job site. We're training models with AI and cameras, right, to identify people are wearing their PPE. If you're on a job site, it's a multi-story building. They have guardrails on OSHA standards or whatever standards you want, and then it will scan the job site with cameras and say, okay, hey, this is a safety risk, and then automatically send a notification to the safety officer and say, hey, at this location, here's an issue, like, go investigate, right? So you still have that human intervention, right, but you're gonna save a lot of money in fines if you can identify it before there's an accident. So that's kind of the role with agentic AI. It's becoming very, very much a buzzword, 2025. That's kind of where we're at, but it's a game changer because, like I said, it just opens up more time and efficiency for your subject matter experts to focus on what they're best at.
Thank you, and I just wanted to take a second to ask out in the crowd if there's any questions or if there's anything on the webinar. If not, oh, okay, here, Ileana, right here.
Yeah. So you guys, you mentioned like you build ads for the companies that don't have you, or like this. So as a small to medium-sized business, right? So as we're growing in complexity, I guess what do you view as levels of priority for someone like me? That's we're smaller than Miller, but we're bigger than a small business, let's say. So what's what do you recommend at first that these small medium-sized businesses implement?
You definitely want to start connecting your systems and your data, right? So when you get your ERP out of the box, it might not have vertical markets as a field when you're creating projects. There's certain aspects out of the box in your systems that don't come made for you, right? So you really need to determine what's important for your business, what needs to be tracked, what needs to be measured, so you can think more proactively instead of reactively. And then once you come up with that framework, you start building that digital infrastructure. You have job template folders. You have all of your data templated and organized in a way that's actionable and easy to digest. And then you have to instill that framework in your coworkers and employees to make sure they utilize it properly. Because you can build the best system in the world, but if you don't train them on how to use it, or you don't monitor to make sure that they are using it, you'll come back 3 months, 6 months later, and find out that you worked in vain, setting up this whole infrastructure because it was never fully realized. So there's a lot that goes into it, but you can start in the most important place, right, which is your jobs. So what's important on a job? What do you need to track on your job? How can you make sure all the information for your projects is in one secure place? And you can use tools like SharePoint and your ERP to help build a single source of truth, so you can start analyzing that data and using it in a more proactive way.
I would say target your big ticket items. So I always say time and money. So what's costing you the most money or costing you the most time, right? Identify those areas and then start building off of there. So after you get your data infrastructure, right? Okay, is the investment, are we gonna get enough ROI by saving, we're saving 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week for this team by implementing AI? Okay, that might be worth exploring, or are we gonna save money throughout the project? So you start kind of looking at labor costs are the big area where you lose money. Loss of tools is an area where you lose money, right? So you start looking at these areas and go, okay, how can we implement the AI to, reduce our spend or our waste and kind of shore that up. So those are kind of the areas that we look at. Typically it's 4 real major areas that everybody's kind of talking about that we see, which is bidding process, because it's very large documents, very time consuming. So how do we automate that and use AI to help us estimating and scheduling, and then risk management are kind of the 4 key areas that we're seeing just across the space. Talking to our partners at different third-party products, those are the areas they're trying to address within their systems. But yeah, you can totally look at kind of where people get bogged down
And just to add to that, build it with your team. It's more impactful if they feel like they're a part of it. So set up a meeting, ask where their bottlenecks are, and then strategize off of that, you know, and try and figure out where the biggest pressure points for your team are. Because when you include them in the process, then it's not just like, here, we're gonna make a huge change, which everybody loves change, right? Yeah, we all love it. But if you make them a part of the change, then they're owners of it, and it helps to make it a little bit better.
I like to call them champions. They're my champions.
They really are, because change is hard. So you are a champion when you're participating in something like that.
Anyone else before we continue?
It's not really a question, it's more so adding to the first question that you had asked about, hey, how do you sell AI to an industry to where people might think that it's replacing them? I think, for example, all of us in the room really understand that it's not something that's going to replace anybody, but like I said, more so enhance. I mean, the way that you sell it is obviously you're able to divert your attention and time from the more mundane things, RFIs and overviews and stuff, and allowing your upper management, so your project managers, your superintendents to focus on the things that bring value to your clients. Quality control, making sure that there's no clashes within the buildings, etc. Allowing the opportunity to free up your younger generation on your team, right? From instead of doing the mundane stuff and emails, hey, here you go. Now actually people to understand how these processes work, how does these systems work, etc. Which in turn allows your team to be a lot more knowledgeable, experience, and then just provides much more value to your client at the end of the day. I think it's a pretty easy sell, but I mean, as long as everybody is within our same understanding, is able to really say that to maybe some people that are not on the same page. I mean, I think it's a pretty easy sell. I see everybody nodding their head and like, yeah, this makes sense to us. But
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I mean, one thing that we've done at Miller, and I think Tracy was pretty impressed, you know, we have these ops meetings and we're showing them the capabilities, and when people see that and what it can do for you and their teams, then that's when they want to start using it.
oh yeah.
And we are a specialized field, and there is a data point out there that the most impact that AI has is actually on the lower skilled workforce, right? So it can create 60% efficiency gain in your new workers, right? So you're bringing someone new into the organization, they don't have that same framework that we do, that we've built up over, 18, however many years that we've all been working in the industry and building in the industry. So to be able to upskill someone more rapidly is going to increase efficiency across the board as well.
Anything else before we continue? All right, so I know we touched on it a little bit, but I want to give everyone the opportunity to discuss within their own companies how they're handling this. So what are you currently doing to train your teams on how to utilize AI properly when you implement these new tools?
So I'm probably repeating myself, but we do have quite a few meetings regarding AI and what it can do for us. I'm not IT, but I do work alongside with IT, who has, closed our, is managing that data in the back end, allowing our teams to, be able to use that data and AI.
I'm not going to say it's always a win either, because I am like an intersection of integration, so I'm like IT and people and processes, and sometimes things catch me off guard too. There's no perfect person, nobody's going to know everything. We had an outbreak recently of Otter AI, which is a meeting recording, app, and those things are great. It's amazing to be sitting in a webinar even like this and get a high-level overview, XYZ, these are the points you need to take away from it. But when you have systems like that are joining every meeting, you may have some meetings that you don't want a summary sent out at the end to everybody that was invited to it, right?
No.
Like, you could have a situation where
That's close.
someone didn't come to the meeting and the meeting shifted to that, and this person's been, or you have financial data or whatever the case may be, and then AI sends out that nice little summary afterwards saying, here's our EBITDA, here's our revenue targets, and here's our pressure points, and
Turn it off. Turn that off.
People have So, like, you have to control things too. You have to like be on top of the market and take a look at things and realize where there's value and where there's not value, right? So even building policies around that is important, and making sure people know, certain tools aren't authorized and these are the use cases for them. It's very important to control that.
Yeah, the governance of the data and the tools, that's one of the issues we have, is, well, I work out of Arizona, and so I'm on the other side of the country, but I meet with people all over the world, and they're ready to hop on a call through Zoom or Teams, and their AI virtual assistant pops in first, right? And it's like, all right, got it, and a lot of times we're, discussing proprietary solutioning on those calls where I don't really want them to have it. I'll give it to you after we engage. That's not a problem. But I don't necessarily want to give it to you for free right now. So that's kind of the as a sales guy, right? I gotta give it to you in pieces. So it's just say bring those tools and making sure that the team's aware that when you see those things, hey, you got to remove it and kind of manage it. And then also, like Whitney said, right, keeping things that something simple, right, off the open source AI tools, because you don't want to be the one to kind of like expose that information out there. And I kind of go back to the very when ChatGPT kind of went live and Google started with Gemini. A lot of it was shown when they kind of went early on the release to be first to market, and we saw a lot of issues with some of the responses that were out on Gemini, very inaccurate and bad information. So, but that's just because of the way that the models were trained. So, it's not 100% accurate. So, also realize that you have to check the work, or else you may be sending out some crazy information. Don't want necessarily have that too much.
I remember our CEO a year ago comes into my office and says, "Oh my gosh, this ChatGPT is so cool. I love it. It is so awesome. We gotta start using it." And we're like, okay, let's calm down a little bit. And we're like, we're not gonna be using ChatGPT. What? No, it's the greatest. But anyways, now he understands why we're not using ChatGPT and we're using Copilot. You have to inform people and make sure that you have the right systems in place.
And just to talk on those hallucinations, is what they call it in AI, when it makes up data and facts and statistics, it does do that. It is a little bit of a people pleaser sometimes. It's empathetic. It's got personality traits that make you want to relate to it and talk to it. So you do need to, as thought leaders and someone implementing this kind of technology, learn how to prompt it correctly and how to ask the right questions and how to make it question your biases and its own biases, so you get an actual answer that makes sense for the marketplace. Don't take everything at face value. I have a funny story about a coworker who used it to draft an email once for training that they were doing in Fort Lauderdale, and he sent it out. But when it went out, he was doing tanning in Fort Lauderdale because he didn't read it properly, and he sent it out to the whole office. And people were replying back like, 2 days of tanning in Fort Lauderdale, that seems excessive, So it's gonna put in what you give it, and it still needs our guidance and our expertise and our revision and our review to make it accurate and actionable. So just training around it and making sure you question it and you don't just take everything at face value is really important.
And Ranjit, one of the things we do when we're building solutions for our clients is we focus on accuracy and confidence. So if you can kind of explain how we get accuracy and confidence in the tools that we're building.
Yeah, so I'll take one example of using AI. For one of our customers, we are building AI solution to detect if the resume was prepared by AI. So the tool gonna detect the effectiveness and content of the resume and identify if that was generated by AI, the answer was created by AI. So it sounds like that even for the CVT. We are using that one. In construction industry, we are helping customer with different analytical report and analyzing the data, coming up with intelligence out of the pre-existing data.
Yeah, so that confidence score or the accuracy rate, you'll never get to 100% because it's always evolving. Think of it like a baby, right? It goes from kind of a baby phase to a teenage stage, where it's really kind of painful. And then you get to that kind of, early adult age, and then it becomes pretty effective. But that's one thing that we've built into a lot of our systems, and it'll actually show the score of how accurate it is, so that way you can make sure that you're monitoring drift or hallucination, bias, things of that nature, so that way you don't have people going camping for water for 2 days.
And I just want to touch back on that point of that process that you're building out for resumes and CV review. That's huge because I work with the HR department, extensively on making sure we have the right culture fit, we're building the right team, and I get to see a lot of resumes coming through, and I've seen it a lot more frequently now. Almost everybody puts their resumes through some sort of public open source AI and builds out the best and most accurate, match for your company. They'll look at your job description straight from the website, pop it into ChatGPT or whatever, make this, actionable for what I do, and it spits out something pretty amazing. So when HR is reading these at a surface level, they're thinking, wow, this is a dynamic employee. And, once you get them to the interview table, you might find out different, but you might not, depending on what type of an individual they are and how confident they are and how, they're able to manipulate themselves in a situation. So, tools like that are phenomenal as well. If it's like a first check, okay, this passes a first check, and now we can go into the interview phase and not waste our time spinning our wheels, because we all know talent acquisition is difficult enough in this industry, so that's just another pressure point on it.
Yeah, it is truly cross-departmental, right? So it's literally, every department within the company can benefit from using these tools. So whether you're on the HR side, or the operations side, or the accounts payable side, and just put out the list, right? Having all those departments kind of knock down those silos, those walls, to open up the communication and the information flow from one area to the next. That's kind of seems to be a trend, is that people are trying to break down those walls, the silos, and organizations are becoming much more cross-functional because of AI. So it's kind of a pro that we're seeing with all of our clients, where it's, before those people were just over there, they didn't know what they did, but now because everything's kind of centralized, it's just creating a different culture.
And I know we touched on this a lot already, but it's our last question, so I want to give the opportunity in case there's something we missed. Is there any specific policies in place within your companies to protect this company data?
Short and sweet is that we have a do's and don'ts. It's not necessarily that we have a policy in place. We have a do's and don'ts, and that we communicate it clearly to our people.
Very similar to ours. We do have an official policy in place, but we know people have trouble reading policies sometimes. So that little checklist of do's and don'ts is really effective. And, monitoring, like I said, the network traffic and doing continued education around it, because it's continuing. We're in that in-between stage, like I said, so it's continuing to develop. We're going to see new and phenomenal opportunities open up every single day. They actually said by 2030, we might actually have AGI, which is human-level general intelligence from these types of systems. So, I can't predict the future. Sergey Brin, who's one of the leaders in our industry, he can't predict what's going to happen. He actually was in the room with some of the creators of AI, and his teammate was like, "Oh, look, it just drew a cat for me," and he was like, "Whatever," you know. So he admits to having short-sold the opportunities that this technology is going to bring us. So you need to be proactive. Your IT and infrastructure teams need to be aware of all the changes, all the innovations, and the best practices in that. And pushing that out as soon as you're able is the best way to maintain compliance and security.
Yeah, no, as a technology company, we invested heavily in the private AI servers. Somebody told me one time how big it was. It's billions of nodes. That's all I know. I don't know what they do. Rich, you can probably explain it better than I can. But it was a heavy investment, you know, for the company to safeguard that data and make sure that all of our information is, you know, secure. And then it's not being exposed to the outside world. Unless we want to, you know, obviously there's some stuff that we want out there, you know, marketing and other departments, but for the most part, you know, all behind the scenes stuff, we want to keep it behind the scenes. So just identifying that it's an investment and the return on it is worth it. And then lastly, just kind of, you know, getting with all the teams. And something we do is we have a monthly meeting on how we can leverage AI at different levels, right, to increase our efficiency. You know, how can we open up more time? We only have so many hours in a day. All of our calendars probably look pretty similar. You know, nonstop. You know, how do you know, get 30 hours back, or how can I get, you know, 20 hours back a month? That's kind of what we're looking at.
Exactly. Being a service provider company, we not just protect our own data, but we have to protect our customers' data as well, hundreds of customers. So we simply have one policy: no public AI use. Almost every AI platform has a in-premise version. So you just have to opt for it. You need a infrastructure to host it in-premise, and that's how we protect our data and our customers' data. We have in-premise AI platforms for every use.
I also just want to say that, you know, don't get overwhelmed. Don't start out by looking at all of these different AI products and say, oh, I need this, I need that. I hear from a lot of GCs that, oh, I have all the tools in the world, but okay, you're spending a lot of money on them, but you're not actually using them. So start with one and then build from there. You know, we have been using Copilot. We're now going to get into using Procore Assist and gradually creating those agents in there to get data from Procore. And hopefully in the future, very soon, we'll move to use Sage 300. So moving to Sage Intact and utilizing their Copilot is in Miller's future.
That's so smart. Yeah, definitely don't start too many initiatives or projects at the same time. Really vet it out. Have key stakeholders engaged with you. You know, if it's the AP automation, have AP involved, have the CFO involved, have your IT team involved. You know, you want to really roll out one or two things successfully and then build on the next platform. So it's not a race to the finish line. Everything you do is going to create efficiency and growth and gain. It's about doing it right and having the right teammates to help you succeed.
All right, guys, well, it looks like we're coming up on time. Before I close it out, does anyone have any final questions?
As far as implementation, in your experience, do you guys see a bigger advantage in trying to do a mass rollout, like for instance for a big company where you have multiple data entry points? Or do you believe that it's more advantageous to just have a few champions get a little bit more versed on how they can use it to their advantage, and then later on roll out for the rest of the company?
Yeah, so typically you want to take a phased approach, right? So kind of like they said, right? Figure out those one or two key areas that you want to hone in on, and then get those champions to test it, right? And make sure that you're getting output. That's, you know, the most important thing is before you kind of roll it out to the whole company, test it internally, right? And make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do, right? And then have success. We preach success before process, right? So once we have the success on a small level, right, now we can create the process to rolling it out to the rest of the team. That way, it's not overwhelming. I mean, anytime you have to change people's way of doing business, it's painful, right? So kind of internally, you know, get a steering committee or a group or something to kind of, you know, bring that adoption in and get their buy-in, and then have them be the ones to get the buy-in across the rest of the organization after you kind of test it and make sure that it's hit the mark.
Yeah, I think, you know, creating the group of champions, you know, we have from our ops meetings to our PA meetings to our PM meetings and our super meetings, and maybe getting one person from each of those departments and starting to become those champions who are passionate about it, and, you know, gaining those success stories and sharing it to those teams is a good way to kind of roll it out.
I would add a little point. My recommendation will be to go department to department. Identify the department who has the maximum manual process, automate it, create the case example to motivate other department adopt it. That's what I have seen the easiest way to transition your people adopting. Yeah.
And if you are large scale enough to have different business units, different divisions, different companies under your wing, you as a leader know which ones are more tech forward and you know, less capable of adapting to change, maybe more rooted in their policies and their procedures. So, you know, in my instance with Thermal Concepts, we have multiple entities, and some of them are more open to change and open to new environments. So if you can find a subsector within your company and roll it out in one of your smaller divisions and then scale up, that's a great, easy win for you too, because you can really build the framework with one team and then phase out the rest.
I do also want to say, this is my little tip, when using Copilot, I do love to use Copilot in Teams. That's where I utilize Copilot for everything. I don't necessarily go into Word, I use it in my email, but Teams is a fantastic way to use Copilot. Just my preference.
All right, everyone. Well, I think that's time. Thank you so much for coming out today and spending the morning with us. Could we get a round of applause for this awesome panel? Again, thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Probably ground in your company, or you